right. Welcome to the market penetration module here. This is the introduction to all this. I recently had an epiphany, like a massive epiphany, okay? And I wanted to share the story of how I came to this realization because I think it would be maybe the most effective crowbar that could reframe your thought process to understand how digital can change your life by creating a cash flowing artist business. I was meeting with a huge producer about working with his artists to implement our digital marketing tactics and artist promotional strategies. This man is a genius as far as I'm concerned. So I don't want you to think that I'm disparaging him in any way, because the truth is I've been having these conversations with industry people for years now. And I'm just using this as an example because it's immediately following this conversation where I had the epiphany on what was frustrating me and where I was failing to communicate, which is going to benefit you, okay? So it's human nature to feel, and I think you would agree, to feel more comfortable with the devil you know than with the devil you don't. If you play with the devil you don't, you risk losing time, money, results, a reputation. And so that risk seems to outweigh the attraction or the comfortableness, the familiarity with the devil you know, even if the devil you know isn't working, right? So our conversation with this producer, it went like this. He's like, Johnny, if I spend $5,000 on digital ads, when do I get like 5,001 back? And this is an honest question. It's a question everybody asks when they're meeting with the devil they don't know. So it's understandable too, right? The question I'm used to getting, once again. There's a famous saying that says that sometimes you don't need to know how the clock works, you just need to know what time it is, right? At least it's one of my favorite sayings, let's put it that way. It seems to be human nature to ignore asking what time it is in favor of focusing on how the clock works when we find ourselves in unfamiliar territory. The industry people that I've spoken to in the last couple of years, and a lot of artists, they seem interested in the results that I've gotten through the devil that they don't know because they don't understand them exactly. So while they want to know if it's going to work and when it's going to work, they tend to focus on how it's going to work so that they can try to wrap their mind around it and give approval. And also, when they're going to get their money back. Now, this is an incredibly reasonable line of thinking for anybody who's going to invest money, right? That makes sense. So this isn't a bad thing, okay? But I answered this producer. I said, brother, how did you market your last big artist release? And the producer's like, we went to radio. And I said, how much did you spend and when did you get it back? And the producer answered, we didn't. And so I just kind of said, can we start that conversation right here then? Because essentially what he's doing, understandably, again, not disparaging him, this is human nature. He's comparing the devil he knows, which isn't working, and he's feeling enough pain because the devil he knows isn't working for him, which is why I even have the meeting to begin with. But he's comparing it against the devil he doesn't know. And it's not jiving, right? So I left that meeting a little frustrated, very frustrated, because I was frustrated in myself because I wasn't clearly communicating the power of digital marketing. And to be clear, communication is defined as what is being received by the person you're communicating to. It doesn't matter what I'm trying to tell him. If he's not understanding it, that means I'm not communicating it, and therefore it's on me. And this is the frustration I was having. So that got me thinking, why on God's green earth does everybody have a romance with radio that is so powerful that they will continue to spend boatloads and boatloads of cash to get diminishing returns at best, significantly diminishing returns at best, and more often than not, like zero returns at worst, which is the norm. I mean, again, I was called to this meeting so they could explore other methods to market their artists, but they all seemed to be needing me to somehow like walk on water in order to convince them to stray off the beaten path, even though that beaten path no longer leads them to the water that they want to drink, right? So I understood this producer, and I understand that the rest of the industry why they keep asking these questions, but it hit me that they were really asking the wrong questions. Even though the questions were sensible, it didn't make sense. These questions didn't make sense in the context of how they actually succeeded with the devil they know, which is radio, versus the devil they don't, which is digital. They were comparing apples and oranges and camel humps and trying to get them in their own minds to be the same thing. And they're absolutely different things, right? I mean, think about how long it took for most major labels to get their money back on an artist during the heyday of the music industry, when radio was a dependable, repeatable method for launching artists, right? Yes, there was a few lottery ticket winners like Alanis Morissette, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, Whitney Houston's first record. These launched right out of the box, debut record, and were hugely successful, big money makers. It was amazing. But the typical gestation period for a label to get a cash return on an artist that it's going to invest in was 3 albums. 3. So how would that work? I mean, they would promote the fire out of album number 1, and inevitably you're going to lose money on that. But you've built an audience now, right? That also meant, by the way, the artist was in massive debt with the label. Then on the second record, hopefully they'd break even on remember, it used to cost a lot of money to make a record back in the day. So we're talking about the cost of making the record, couple $100,000, plus the promotion, which is going to be millions. And hopefully if they did their job right on the second record, they were going to make enough money on the sales of that album to completely pay back all the overhead, the cost to make it, the cost to go promote it to radio. If they were lucky, if things went really well, maybe they make a little profit on the second record, which was then applied to offset the losses on the first record. And then, like, boom, it all happens on the third record. The third record is where, of course, the artist's brand is, we started off on the first record with pushing out that first record. Then the second record, that your brand is bigger. You've got more of an audience than you had on the first record. And then by the third record, it's ready to hit critical mass and sort of blow up, as they say. And that third record is the moneymaker. And a lot of things happen too. I mean, this isn't just from the promotion side, but on the artist side. If you're, back when the labels would pick a talented artist with a lot of potential out of obscurity and put them on the world stage, by the third record, the artists would start to get their head, or everything, the game would slow down and they would become students of the game and really begin to, really at the end of the second record, leading into the third record, that's where they're going to write their best songs. They understand how to write better songs. They understand the whole promotion process, the touring process. They fully understand the business they're in now. They've got their sea legs, and even some of them have mastered it, right? So you've got an artist coming into his or her own at the third album, and also the market is ready to receive. We've gotten past that law of diffusion, where we've got the pioneers and the early adopters are all in, and they're buyers, and now we're hitting that big majority hump on that law of diffusion. But it didn't happen overnight. So that got me thinking, well, how did it happen? Have you ever thought about this? Like, how did it actually happen? How did an artist go from getting a record deal to magically selling millions of records and concert tickets? Like, what happened that got in the consumer mind, or in herds of consumer minds, that got them to say, this is worth it. I love this artist. I have to have that record. We're going to go see them live. What really happened? I bet your first thought was radio. And radio is definitely the needle, okay, that delivered the drug necessary for artist success. But radio wasn't the drug. This is the epiphany that I had. The drug was market penetration. The drug was market penetration. Radio delivered market penetration for artists and labels for decades. It's also true that radio and market penetration are two completely different things, which explains the romance, the bad romance, to quote Gaga, of the industry and radio. It's turned into a bad romance. And like a beaten wife, or, there's some kind of Stockholm syndrome going on where the industry's having a hard time separating from it. Although in the first couple months in 2022, I have never seen more articles and more high-level press on the diminishing role of radio in terms of breaking artists, which is fascinating, right? Last year and the year before that, you talk to people in radio and they're like, it's the end-all be-all, even though it's not. I mean, I talk to people who own radio stations, like, well, everybody's always going to need radio for local news and weather. And I'm like, I've got an iPhone app that's got 2 or 3 different apps for, traffic, weather, and I get so much local news thrown at me on my phone. I haven't owned cable in 8 years. So that's a false statement. That's a false belief, right? Radio and market penetration are two completely different things. Let me get this very, very clear to you guys. There is no shortage of incredible music and amazing artists in the world today. I know many of them, so do you. We don't know most of them because there is a shortage of market penetration. There's a famine of market penetration. Even you, higher level artists, don't know about most of the amazing new music from your own respective genres. Okay? And the amazing new music that you are aware of doesn't count in this example that I'm giving because you are in the industry. Right? You're not a civilian. You have the curse of knowledge. You have a palpable interest in what's going on in your genre, as well as access through industry peer relationships to be turned on to truly incredible new artists. Consumers don't have that. They're not aware like you're aware. It's not enough to have a hit song. A hit song only becomes a hit with market penetration. It's not enough to have an incredibly talented artist, a phenomenally talented artist, like a Prince, like an Adele, one of those once in a millennial artists, Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder. It's not enough to have an incredibly talented artist. That amazing artist only becomes iconic in the mind of the consumer with market penetration. You might have heard that once true, the formerly true music business mantra that when something in the way of, it's incredible what a hit song can do. A hit song can work miracles. A hit song can do this and can do that, and just out of nowhere it does, all these amazing things. This is true. This is absolutely true. When the labels and the management companies and the publishing companies and the other artists get excited about the potential business success of a hit song, that excitement about the capability of that song and what that song can do is predicated on a dependable, repeatable mechanism to achieve market penetration. The opposite is true as well now. Sufficient market penetration doesn't make a mediocre song into a hit song. Artist success requires both, really great songs and market penetration. One hit wonders only happen with a hit song plus market penetration. Iconic artists with career longevity only happen with a string of great songs plus market penetration for each song. A hit song is not a hit until enough people have heard it enough times, which is a byproduct of market penetration. Without market penetration, you only have a hit-worthy song, period. The industry's romance with terrestrial radio is honest and understandable because radio used to be a reliable, dependable vehicle to achieve market penetration. And naturally, it was that reliable and that dependable for decades, since the 40s, right? So, 80 years, for 8 decades, it was reliable, it was dependable. So naturally, we associate market penetration with radio, which is why so many artists and labels continue to market via radio, even though at best it's not working like it used to, and really it's just not working at all. Certainly not launching artists, okay? When a signed artist recorded a hit song and the label knew they had a hit on their hands back in the day, and that they got behind the song to promote it because they had relationships in radio and a budget to promote it to radio, and they had a well-paved, well-lit, reliable path to drive a proven process down that road to achieve market penetration. That's why everybody got excited, because the outcome was doable, dependable, and reliable. And we know when we got this one little thing and we put it right here, it's going to go. This was radio. This was the vehicle. But what happened was market penetration. So market penetration, not radio, was what gave your favorite artist songs a life. Market penetration, not radio, created your favorite artist superstars. Market penetration, not radio, created the consumer buzz that led to ticket sales and album sales and now streaming sales and career longevity as an artist. Radio used to effectively deliver market penetration. Now it doesn't. Period.
Bye.